All righty. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. We're just going to give everyone about another 20 seconds or so to start filing in here. Hope everyone's having a great night. We're going to have some fun tonight talking about some coaching, how we can look at other drivers' videos, and see what we can do to improve. So we got a decent crowd filing in. So I said, let's go ahead and kick things off. So first off, welcome, everyone. I'm Dion with Racers360. We're the online coaching platform where you can send in your video and learn from some of the world's best coaches from IMSA, IndyCar, and beyond, no matter what your experience level is or where you race. So tonight, I'm excited. We're working with Grassroots Motorsports and their team. We have video from Jesse, and we'll be reviewing Jesse's video in front of everyone. Jesse, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone joining in?
Cool. So I'm Jesse Spiker. I'm associated with Grassroots in some way. I have my own shop at Spiker Motorsports. I've been working with Grassroots for a couple of years now, mainly building their cars, but they've, for some reason, let me drive the car now. So we're here to learn why that was a bad idea.
Maybe turn it into a brilliant idea, right? And then we also have Tom on from Grassroots Motorsports as well. He's the one that made this all happen. So thanks for joining in, Tom, and we're looking forward to a fun night.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. And don't let Jesse sell himself short here. Him getting on track at Daytona was, what, a 10-year dream you finally realized here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's what makes this sport special, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So for everyone joining in, I would love to make this as interactive as possible. So if you kind of scroll over my beautiful face right there, go to the bottom of the screen, you should see a chat box. If you click that chat box, it'll open up the chat, leave questions, make comments throughout it. I'll be consistently looking at the chat box and trying to interact. If you have questions, talk about those questions. And at the end, we'll also have like a dedicated Q&A period. So please don't be shy. Use that. Let's have a great time tonight. And I'm going to go ahead and start sharing some video here and go and get started. You cool with that?
Let's do it.
Awesome. So we've got Jesse's video up here. And, Jesse, the thing that I wanted to start with is something that I think a lot of drivers go wrong with. And what I wanted to just have a natural discussion with you about is when you're heading out on track, and I know this was the first time, and Daytona is a really intimidating place really to do that, right? It's huge. Yeah. Do you have any sort of a plan while you're on the racetrack, like a systematic approach to like what you need to focus on?
So basically, I was going out. This was my first time green flagging a race. The only thing going through my head was don't hit anybody.
And it's not a bad thing to be thinking about sometimes.
Yeah, that was really my thing. I'd never raced Daytona before, so my kind of next concern was finding the line. My plan was to follow the slowest car I could find. So I just kind of dodged everybody for as long as I could until I was in the right kind of groove, and then tried to follow everybody to see where I needed to be on track, and then tried to find my way from there.
Gotcha. So what I'd like to talk a little bit about today is help you formulate a plan for the next event, so that when you're on track, you can focus on the more important aspects. So one of the hardest things about driving a race car is there's so much going on, especially when you introduce wheel-to-wheel racing, other classes. There's a lot of noise. So how can we reduce that noise so that you can give yourself just like 1, 2, or 3 things to focus on so that you can build consistency? And what are those 1, 2, or 3 things? Like, what do they look like? So the first thing, when I hear you talk kind of like what your approach was, my first bit of advice would be, for the racing you're doing and most amateur enthusiast racers, you're going to tend to probably want to avoid what a lot of other people are doing, especially when they're the slower cars on the racetrack. Like that's typically, they're probably, obviously a lot of times it's car, but they're probably not there doing the right things. So my first piece of advice would be do some prep work ahead of time on sort of what the general line looks like. This could take you 5 minutes of time. It doesn't need to be a lot. The hard part is curating the video. So everyone joining in at Racers360, we do a lot of that for you. We'll curate the right onboard videos. We've got track guides to kind of talk about the general themes to look at. So definitely I would recommend our source, but any other reputable source that you can trust, just take a look at that and get a feel for what the line looks like. So that's sort of the first thing I would do. And then what you're trying to do from there is really, you're correct on trying to figure out what the line looks like. And I like to learn a track almost backwards. So if I were to go a little bit farther forward here, what we're looking at into turn 1, for instance. So for me, when I'm trying to figure out turn 1, the first thing that I want to figure out in a corner is apex to exit. So I don't really care about the entry of the corner initially. I don't care how deep I brake. I'm not trying to brake super deep. I'm not trying to carry a lot of entry speed in. When I'm first learning a racetrack, I'm trying to figure out at what point should I be applying the throttle, and then how much road can I use a corner exit. So some corners, right, we have to sacrifice a little bit of speed to set up for the next corners. And then sometimes we don't need to at all. So this is the point of the corner that I would like to see you focus on first. And the number one thing is, where is my apex point? And making sure I'm hitting that apex point. So the one thing that I think we were not consistent with, that I'll show you as we go through the lap here, was really nailing our apexes. A lot of times we were like a half car width off of our apex, and a track like Daytona, being right on that apex is so important, because you can really allow yourself to roll a lot more speed, get the rotation you need, get the exit. So we'll talk about that when it's a little bit more obvious, and I'll come back to turn 1 here and where our apex point should be. So the second point is, at the exit point, you started to feel, and probably if I'd never been to Daytona before and I looked at the track map, I'd probably do what you're doing here, which is sacrifice a little bit of speed on exit, set up to the left to get ready for the chicane, right? Like, that makes sense. But if you had a plan, and this is where I saw that I felt like we were lacking a bit of a plan, was once you did a few laps and you went through this chicane here, I think you would have realized it's a pretty easy chicane, right? Like, there's not a lot of load on the car. So this is where I'd like to have seen you, if you had a plan, if you said, hey, I'm going to start off sacrificing speed here to set up to the left. And let's say 10 minutes into the session, you realize, hey, this chicane's faster than I realized. That should tell you in the corner before, I can use a little bit more road out to the right-hand side. Okay. And maybe I would, like the next lap, maybe I'll be a car width more to the right. And is it still easy flat? If it is, I'm going to use another car width more to the right. Is it still easy flat? If it is, I'm going to start using as much road as possible, because then I'm not sacrificing speed.
Right.
That sort of makes sense so far.
This is real interesting because, you know, as the team manager here, we have in-car from Daytona, and we didn't talk about any of this with Jesse. We just threw him out to the wolves.
Nice.
I guess we probably should have told him something before putting him out.
Yeah, some general things, like as a driver, there's some things that I would like to hear and some things that I wouldn't like to hear. So I would like to hear if a chicane's pretty easy flat, or, and I mean, if it's got to be really easy flat. If it's even borderline, then I'd rather err on telling the driver something conservative. But for, like, we all know the chicane at Daytona is pretty easy flat, right? Well,
not Jesse apparently, but yeah.
Well, not yet. But it goes into the theme of understanding why we're sacrificing speed. And that'll come up again in turn 4. So, Jesse, is this all kind of making sense so far?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So the next thing for me is sort of just a very basic kind of Daytona-specific thing. Are you planning to go back to Daytona like next year or later this year at all?
Yeah, I live about 5 miles away from the track, so the goal is to be on that track as much as possible.
Awesome. So this is a small Daytona-specific thing. I love here that you have the thought to use all of the road on entry to set up for the apex, right? But this road here, about right now, about this green line point, everything over here is actually off cambered. So it's sort of flat, and then the road falls away. Okay. So by using all the road, you actually are now off camber and it's harder to make the entry. So I really like to have my right side tires about where your left side tires are for turn 1 at Daytona.
Okay.
And then the next thing is the apex point is really the start of these tires.
Okay.
I want to come in and it's like I sometimes feel like my mirror is going to hit the tires. So we obviously don't want to hit the tires, right? But we've got to be down there early. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow you to roll a lot more speed into the corner. And yes, that earlier apex will make you go wider on the exit. But as we talked about, we've got the road to use on the exit.
Right.
So the main theme is about having this plan, understanding if I'm going to do this, I want a reason for why I'm doing this.
Okay.
And I feel like that will allow you to have a systematic approach to lower risk to going fast. Like one of the hardest things is if you just starting to go, like want to go fast without a plan, that's where we really increase the risk of it. But if you have a plan of saying, I'm going to focus on my apex to exit, and I know, hey, I'm going to pick up the throttle at the apex, no earlier than that, and I'm going to get back to flat. I'm going to sacrifice speed here to say to the left, or I'm going to use all the road. What you could do then is now you have a systematic approach to this is the most important thing. So the most important thing is apex to exit first. What's going to happen then is as you're working on building speed and building speed and building speed, you're going to be able to sort of have a foundation to build off of. So where a lot of drivers go wrong is they try to roll more entry speed and more entry speed and more entry speed, and they don't really know where the limit is. And sometimes they're like, they get lost and they end up bringing way too much entry speed in. But you can avoid that by saying, hey, this is where I'm applying the throttle. I'm going to make sure I use all of the road on exit. I'm going to make sure I get to throttle there. And now you have something to work off of. What I want you to be able to do is eventually say, I'm going to try to roll in 5 miles an hour next lap more on entry. And then 2 miles an hour more. And then 1 mile an hour more. You might not have the feel for it yet. Like it might be 10 miles an hour one lap. And then you might go slower the next lap as you get the feel for it. Mm-hmm. But once you know this is where I'm applying the throttle, this is where my apex point is, you're going to be able to start to realize, oh, damn, I missed it a little bit this lap. And now you know, okay, I got to adjust, I got to bring it back. Or you turn in, you're like, oh my God, I feel so slow. But you're not going to allow yourself to get the throttle. And now you really know I can brake deeper next lap, or I can roll more entry speed next lap. So it's sort of the first part is building that foundation. Does that all make sense?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Just really quick.
Jesse, just like Lewis Hamilton. Well done.
Yeah, exactly. So for Mary, will the program be available to us later to listen again and again? Absolutely. It'll be available on Racers360.com. I think Grassroots Motorsports is posting this as well. Is that right, Tom?
Yep. We'll have it on our YouTube channel shortly afterwards.
Fantastic. So I'd say let's keep going on. I think we covered turn 1 enough, but I wanted to go a little bit deeper dive into turn 1 so that we can work out from there. So quick question for you guys. Is the car stable enough to use a little bit of curbs at all, like these flat curbs at Daytona?
It jumps them like an ATV. It is amazing. It does not care. And it's so worthless, we don't care either.
Awesome. That gives me some stuff to work off of here. So, Jesse, listen to Tom. As a race car driver, I'm like, I'm going to use some curbs.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I'm like, these wheels are $98 a piece. I will bend 4 or 5 a race. Yeah.
Awesome. So what I'm going to show you at corner exit is it looked to me like we were a little tentative on using the curb. Okay. So I really actually like your line through here. Great turning point. Again, great job getting out to the left side of the road. Great early turning point. A lot of people to turn 5 try to turn too late and too sharp, but you come in, you hold the apex. The only thing I would say here is if we get really nitpicky, if I go slow motion here, we're not all over that apex curve. Okay. And turn 3 and turn 5, I think I called this turn 5 a little bit earlier. Turn 3 and turn 5, this is obviously turn 3. I want to use like every little bit of this yellow curve, like my front right's almost in the grass. Okay. But then on corner exit, you would have been perfect. You would have been great job unwinding the steering wheel. But then all of a sudden we get out here and I would like to have seen your car trajectory do something like this and use this curve.
Okay.
And you can actually even see like the rubber line is way out over here. So that's where you know people are running with their outside tires. But it's like we get out here and we're like, oh, like, damn, there's a curve here. Let me avoid it. And then you have to turn more, which scrubs speed. And in a 93 horsepower car, like every little movement on the steering wheel is going to scrub speed and slow you down. So I need you to be thinking like, how do I make this thing like as free as possible? Use every little bit of the road so I'm not scrubbing speed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. But really, like turn 3, man, this was awesome. Great turning point. You didn't really attack the throttle until you're ready to unwind the steering wheel, which is one of the most like golden rules. No throttle until you're ready to unwind. Did that. Bam. Opened. Should have just ran over this curve.
Okay.
Cool. So into turn 4-5 section, this is the area where if you had done just a little bit of work ahead of time, I think you would have gained a ton of time through here.
Okay.
So what I want you to look at here is, once again, having a plan. You had a plan to say, I'm going to sacrifice a little bit of speed in turn 4 to set myself up for turn 5, right? So you hold it all the way left. So my point to you would be, if I'm going to do that, I'm trying to set myself up. If my mentality is to hold it to the left, that means I only really need to get to the left at the turning point, right?
Okay.
So that doesn't mean I need to be all the way left right now. Like the turning point is only there, like the lot of distance, right? So if you have the mentality, I'm going to sacrifice speed to get to the left at the turning point, doesn't mean like let your car be as free as possible so that you can still work back to the left-hand side of the road. That should be your mentality when using speed.
Jesse, I understand why you were doing that, because the car was really uncomfortable through that turn. But if you just rail the curbing, it would stay on it every time, flat out. But I totally get why you were being conservative there.
So that actually kind of thanks for jumping in there, Tom. I really appreciate that, because that actually helps me. In a high-speed corner like turn 4, the more you turn, the more you pinch the car here, the worse that's going to be. The worse it's going to be like, oh, crap, I might lose it, right? So if you could just be unwind the steering wheel here,
okay,
the car is going to feel like it's less at the limit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So my thought is always, if I'm uncomfortable, what can I do to turn less?
Okay.
But one thing that you should know, this is the subtle weirdness of Daytona, is that we don't want to end up here. I want to use every inch of the road on the right-hand side for turn 4, and I don't get back to the left to set up for turn 5 at all. So literally my brake zone, I'm braking right along this line here in a straight line. And what ends up happening is it feels like you brake past the corner and then you naturally end up wide. So I'm braking down the inside. My right front tire right now is like literally like right up against that white line.
Okay.
So that's going to make your turn 4 way easier, because now you're using every bit of the road. And what's going to happen is you're not going to brake and follow this white line. You're going to brake and let the car go straight for a bit. So as the track goes away from you, you come out and you're almost going to you're almost meeting where you are here. And then you're coming in for a later apex.
Okay.
So you don't really gain anything by sacrificing speed. You did it like without needing to do it.
Okay.
So I think that would be worth a fair bit of time. And what's going to happen is you end up here anyway.
Okay.
So the next point for me is, once again, we sacrifice a little bit of speed on exit. Well, I should first say we missed the apex point here a little bit, right? We don't get onto that curve.
Let's not dwell on the negative. Come on, stay positive here.
So the next thing here is, see how much road we have out there to our left-hand side?
Yep.
That we've got to you have to have that mentality of, even if you don't need it. So a lot of corners, I'll overslow. Like the first few laps, right? I'm trying to get it comfortable, figure out like how much speed I can bring in. I'll overslow, and I'll know like I've got not that much speed. I only need half the road.
Okay.
I'm going to make sure I use every little bit of that road. Because what happens is it's kind of a subconscious note. But by turning more here and not allowing the car to be free, it feels like the car is closer to its limit.
Okay.
Which then there's subtle things your brain picks up on. So the next time you come to this corner, you're going to remember what exit I felt like I was close to the limit. But if you had opened your hands and let the car be free, it would have been like, oh my God, I feel so slow. Even if you had known, like, well, I could use more road, there's just too much going on to remember. So just make sure you use all of the road on exit when you're leading onto a straightaway here. Like, you've got tons of time before turn 6. So we don't need to be sacrificing speed. I looked at this and said you probably thought you just didn't need to use it because you didn't roll much speed. I don't know. Would you agree with that?
I would say that's about true because we were, or at least I was coming out of that corner pretty slow.
Yeah.
Like just third and fourth gear is what I was
Yeah.
using. And
I ended up coming in out of that corner in second whenever there was any traffic, and I didn't have a perfect entry. It was a real slow corner in the car for sure.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. So just, on those, just be consistent. Again, having a plan. I'm going to use every inch of that road no matter what, even if I'm checked up. The only reason not to is obviously in traffic. Sometimes all hell breaks loose and you got to adjust, right? But
that's what the bumpers are for.
What's that, Tom?
That's what the bumpers are for.
Exactly. So by the way, everyone watching at home, if you have any questions right now, please, again, don't hesitate to drop them in the chat. I'll be looking at those and can make sure that we're answering your questions as well in all of this. So the next thing here is, what's the most important part of turn 6 in your opinion, Jesse?
It's kind of hard to say. This corner.
Personality. Say personality.
So the way to think about this is, when I look at a track map or look at a corner, my goal as a race car driver is to be as fast as possible over the longer distance. Okay. So in a corner like turn 6, and every corner, you have the choice. I can roll in a little bit more entry speed, and maybe I'll sacrifice a little bit of exit speed. Or I can sacrifice a little bit of entry speed to maximize my exit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So a corner like turn 4, there's not a long exit, right? There's not a lot of road from the exit. So you're coming in, here's the exit, all the way down to turn 5. Not that much time. But the entry, if I can carry 5 miles an hour more into it, that's going to allow me to be faster from here all the way through here, and that momentum is going to carry, and then maybe the car that might just getting a better exit, maybe they'll get a little bit faster than me through here if it's not flat. So not that much time.
Right.
But out of turn 6, you have the choice. I can say I'm going to be faster from, call it here, to about here, or I can sacrifice a little bit of speed there and be faster all the way down to the bus stop.
Okay.
So
I feel with this car, I was doing it backwards. I was going in faster.
Yeah.
And coming out really slow.
Yeah.
And I was just on the bank, kind of twiddling my thumbs. And
well, I mean, to be honest with you, almost no matter what you drive, you're kind of twiddling your thumbs on the bank.
Yeah. Jesse, the way I was taught to take this corner is that if a Miata spins past you and goes way late and misses their apex, that means you've done it right and you slow down enough.
Okay.
I couldn't say it better myself. So most important things here comes back to having a plan. Turn 6, I need to make sure I'm maximizing my exit. So the first thing is, where's my apex point? I need to make sure I get down to that apex, because when I use this apex, it means I can start to unwind the steering wheel earlier. And if I can start to unwind the steering wheel earlier, I can get more aggressively back to flat. And that's going to carry me all the way down to the bus stop, right? So I know then as a driver, the second I'm missing my apex, I broke too deep. I need to back up my brake zone. And that means see how it's like limiting your mistakes, right? Like you came in, you didn't know what to focus on, so you're trying to go faster on the plan. So here it's about understanding how to go fast, understanding what the important parts are, and building off of that. I swear it doesn't make it boring. It makes it more fun, if anything. So the step 1 would be getting all over that apex. and then getting back to throttle as you unwind the steering wheel. That's what was carrying you a lot more speed all the way down to the bus stop.
Right.
And then I'm going to kind of skip through this whole bank thing. Just a small note here. Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't driven a car like with this low of horsepower here, but I'd like to have seen you let the car be free a little bit more up the banking. Like maybe you don't need to get all the way up to the wall, but every little bit that you steer, you're scrubbing a little bit of speed. So I'd like to end up the car width wider.
Honestly, the Fox is so slow, you have to steer up the banking most of the time. So I put on my autocrosser hat and was just trying to drive as short a track as possible. I kept it on the line. That
works. So that's where it's been a little bit of car knowledge. If anyone at home is watching with a little bit more horsepower in the car,
like 100.
Yeah. Like over 100 maybe. Yeah. You can let the car get up to the wall, let it be as free as possible.
It was pretty cool. The Fox is the only thing I've ever driven at Daytona where you couldn't feel a bump going out of the banking because it sprung so softly.
Wow. I wish
yeah.
Like that.
Have you ever seen Talladega Nights after Ricky Bobby gets in the fire and he's crawling around the track? That's what driving this car is.
Truth right there. So to help everyone's enjoyment, I'm going to fast forward a little bit down this banking.
Yeah, 10 minutes later here.
Yeah, 10 minutes later here. So we're approaching the banking. So this is the one thing here. You did a great job at every other corner, making sure you use all of the road as you're approaching the entry. But notice here, you got about a half car width of road out to your right-hand side. So I know it's intimidating a little bit. I know the car can wiggle in the brake zones and things like that. You got to be right up to that wall, especially in this like high-speed corners where there's a lot of load in the car. You want to be trying to steer as least amount as possible. The more you steer, the more loads in the car, and that's especially hard going left or right as we do in the bus stop here. So the next thing for me is, in high-speed corners, or most corners, the earlier you can turn in, the more amount of entry speed you can turn in, to a point. So to help me explain this a little bit, I'm going to try to draw actually like a really crappy track map corner type of thing. So just bear with me here. I'm not an artist, but I just want to help explain what I mean here. So we're coming in, and we've got a corner that does something like this. Beautiful, right? Shrinks up a corner exit. So when you turn in later, it means you have to turn in sharper. And the sharper the angle, the slower the car has to go, because you're turning more, it's more load, the tires are going to give out. So with an earlier turning point, we might have something that looks like this. Does that sort of make sense so far?
Yeah.
The difference is here, like the green line, theoretically at this point in the corner, you can roll more speed than the red. So there's obviously a limit to an early turning point to where you fly off the road on exit. But when I look at the bus stop, I know I want to be turning in as early as I can, so I can turn in with the least amount of steering input as I can, so I can roll entry speed in. But to do that, I need to make sure I hit my apex. And we talked a little bit earlier of that. With this car, curbs don't matter.
Oh, I will. I'll back up a little bit. For this Champ Car event, because it was on the IMSA weekend, we were running the IMSA curbs. So it had like the extra little bolt-on hunks of plastic there.
So I could tell you from the 24-hour, we used our line every lap. Our left front tire was like here.
Huh, okay.
So,
see, I was scared of them. I mean, the car howled like nothing else when you went over them, but I guess maybe they are okay.
Well, Jesse, I'll have to, concede here to your mechanic abilities where I don't have those. So obviously, make sure your car is comfortable with those. But like we use them every single lap. Obviously, there's a huge difference between cars, right? And every car is a little bit different. But they really felt like I don't even feel them as a driver. So we use them every lap. I would suggest they are worth a huge amount of time. Yeah. So like I would go to if my engineer told me I couldn't use those, I would be like, whatever we can do, like I'm willing to sacrifice speed elsewhere on the track to get the car set up to use them, because they're worth a gigantic amount of time in the bus stop.
Okay.
So
this one on Tom.
Jesse's just thinking, he has an engineer? What? I got to change seats here.
Maybe Jesse can do 2 roles here.
Are you
there you go.
Your driver? Or?
You don't want a driver to be an engineer. That's just a bad idea. We're not smart enough, man. So yeah, my advice to you would be, obviously you were told that you couldn't use them, but then I'd be closer to them.
Okay.
Right? So be right there next to them, because the farther out you come here, now the sharper you have to turn back to the right. And cars don't really like going left to right. And the more you have to do it, the more upset the car gets. And I think you had a little incident here where you missed the first apex a little bit. And then as you turn back to the right, it looks like you also lifted. You're worried about other things. But if you had probably gone over that first apex, you probably wouldn't have had that spin that you had.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I knew as soon as I did it, I thought, because there was a guy flying up behind me.
Yeah.
I thought he was dive bombing me. Later on, I learned he absolutely was not. I just got scared.
Hey, that happens to all of us. Like,
And
I wouldn't.
I let out and I just went.
But, after the spin, he did the right thing, 2 feet in, hold on, and cool. Yeah. I mean, look, I wouldn't worry about that with traffic, understanding things. The main thing you can do is have your mirrors in the right point. And I think the more experience you get, you'll start to understand some of the dynamics and how this comes together. But we'll get there as you grow as a driver. For right now, keeping the focus on the basics, because the faster you can go, the less that speed differential is going to be, and the easier it's going to get for you at the end of the day. So another question for you here is, in the bus stop, now we've talked about this, what would your priority be here? Like, what do you think the most important thing in the bus stop is?
From all accounts, I mean, just slamming those curves sounds like that's the right line. And turning it a little earlier and slamming the curbs sounds like the fastest way through it.
So yeah, that definitely is the thing. But the main thing as a driver that I look at in the bus stop, the most important thing is from here on out.
Okay.
Right? Exit of the bus stop.
Exit. Okay.
I found myself paying attention to the 4th curb more than anything else on the entire track.
Love it. So why is that, Tom? Like, what was your thought process there?
Because the Fox has pretty decent brakes. You can do kind of whatever you want on entry or dive bomb a couple people, and but it doesn't get up to speed well at all. So you gotta focus on that exit to get back on the banking and have some chance of not getting bored before you get to turn 1.
Exactly. So like the main thing as a driver, right, is it relates back to steering input as you get the throttle. So like, Jesse, if you heard the old string theory from your feet to the steering wheel before?
Right.
Yeah. So like, like as you apply the throttle, you need to be unwind the steering wheel. Right. So if I know my most important thing is getting back to full throttle, quote unquote, as early as possible, okay. Like ideally full throttle somewhere in this range here in the lower horsepower car, in a higher horsepower car, maybe closer to here. But if I know, hey, I need to be unwind the steering wheel as early as possible to get back to full throttle as early as possible. Well, I know I need to be trying to straight line this section as much as possible, which then means the 4th curb is the most important part of this whole corner.
Okay.
Because the more road you can use, the earlier you can straight line the curb. So
I do have a confession here. Because the left side of the car is so unloaded going over that last curbing, I totally ran it over every time and never told you, Jesse.
Hey, this is great stuff right here. If I had a teammate I was worried about being faster than me, I'd probably not tell him during the weekend either.
I'm just salty because I blew the doors off of him at Barber.
Oh.
It's amazing how if you drive in the rain, you're slower than somebody who drives in the dry. Hey, it's an interesting phenomena.
So now we know, just a subtle thing there for drivers with a little bit more experience. When you try to figure out, do I want to use a curb or not? The big thing to understand is, when you're loaded up, on the loaded side, if you're using the curb, you're going to be affected more. When you're using on the unloaded side, so right now the left-hand side, for right now, is more loaded. But if your hands are straighter, then it's more unloaded. So it kind of is where the weight is. So the more weight it is, the more loaded up it is. And that's where curbs can upset the car more. But if you're using on the unweighted side, for the most part, it's not going to upset the car that much. So what our main goal here is, how do I straight line this thing, right? So the other thing is, Tom, like you mentioned earlier, right now, your right-hand side is pretty unloaded, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means I probably could have used a little bit more of this curve as well. And if I could use a little bit more of that curve, well, then I can straight line it even earlier. So that's what I'm thinking about as a driver, is trying to come in, that's green lines a little bit earlier, but like kind of doing something like this. And some weekends I use more of this right curve. Some weekends I don't. Sometimes I bring in a little bit too much speed and I can't get down there. But no matter what, I'm using every inch of that left curve. And even sometimes I end up in the grass. And you can actually see here, it's a beautiful, you guys were right after the IMSA weekend, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The IMSA was our warm-up race, if you think about it.
I like it. Notice how there's no grass here anymore? That's all dirt. That's all like that's our fault. That's where a lot of people end up driving. And that's the emphasis, right? Like you're using every little bit of that road to get the run out of there. And I tell you what, I've ended up in the dirt there a few times. In a low car like the GT3 cars, you hear like a bang, and you're like, ooh, I'm not going to tell my engineer about that one, but nothing ends up really happening. So you don't want to end up there, but you know, it's priorities, right?
Right.
And then
Just a tie rod end. You didn't need that.
straight line all the way down to turn 1, and you're rocking and rolling.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's for me. The main themes were kind of trying to give you an action plan, like understanding before I get to the race weekend. Let me just get a general idea of where should I get my car placement. Make sure I'm studying from people that are good. It's very easy to end up watching videos on YouTube from people that you think are good but are not. So make sure you go to a curated source. Would love that to be Racers360, obviously, but any curated source, good. Understand the car placement, and then from there, build up sort of apex to exit. Know where you're apexing. Understand why I'm doing something. Why am I getting the throttle here? Because of weight transfer. Why am I sacrificing speed or not sacrificing speed? Once you can do that, you'll have a foundation that you can bring to any racetrack in any car and be able to build off of. Do you have any questions?
So, I've got one. So I mentioned that when Jesse, Jesse's going to drive with us, we put him in the car, said, don't hit the curbing, have fun. When you go and join a new team and do a pro race, what do they tell you? Same thing, or do they help you a little more?
To be honest with you, it very much depends on the quality of the team. There's been plenty of times where they've told me nothing. I guess there's a lot of context there. So in a situation like the 6 hours of Watkins Glen and with the Continental tires that we were driving at the time, I'm thinking of when I joined Magnus. The rules there were, when you have low tire pressures, you try to avoid curbs, because the curbs can cause the tire to like come off the rim a little bit and cross the tire. So like the rule there was no curbs for the first 2 laps. So that's all I was told, like nothing else. If I'm driving a new car, I'll try to pick the brain of that driver a little bit. But for the most part, it's sort of figure it out on your own. Like when I look back, one of the situations that I found myself on was the IMSA race weekend at Lime Rock Park in 2017. I joined, at the time, Sun Energy Racing as a reserve driver because the main driver was feeling sick. The reserve driver did the whole weekend, qualified the car, woke up race day morning and was like, you know what, I feel terrible. Dion, you're in. I'd never even sat in the car before, and the first lap I was going to have was in the recon lap. And I'm trying to think, like, what did I go and ask? My teammate was Tristan Vautier, who we had worked a little bit together before. And I didn't ask that much. Like, it was sort of, understanding the car control switches, making sure I know what to do if you have a lot of those, making sure you get your seating position right. Other than that, it was sort of like, go do it. But then once I've gone out there and done a stint or a few laps, then we start to have conversations. And like with Tristan, he had driven the Audi with me. So now I was understanding the differences for the Mercedes, and there's some differences in how you trail brake the car, how it generates grip. It makes some noises in the downhill at Lime Rock, and he was like, just ignore those. So there's some very basic things, but for the most part, I try not to get too much in my brain. I don't want to have too many expectations, because we all drive things in different ways and have different styles. And I don't know. I'm a driver that likes a little bit less information initially, and then once I get warmed up and get a feel for it, then I want as much information as I can get.
Fair enough. That makes sense.
Yeah. It's, there's already so much noise out there, to be honest with you. If you had told Jesse probably any more than that, he probably would have forgotten it by the first lap. And that's not a slight on you, Jesse. That would be the same thing for me as well.
That's not far from the truth.
And I guess a similar question, how do you use the radios when you're training a new driver, or do you?
So the way I like to use the radios, and this also is also something for right seat coaching, which I'm sure a lot of people on this have done before as well. I am not a believer in right seat coaching or using a lot of radio in the moment beyond the basics. So like Jesse, what I would have seen this video, I would have seen you go out of turn 5 and sacrifice the road, telling you, hey, don't sacrifice, open up, something I would say. But for the most part, my approach to radio work is I first let the driver go out and drive, get a baseline, come in, let's watch your video, let's look at your data, let's use Racers360 to come up with a plan. And then from there, we're going to focus on like 1 or 2 things. Like, here's my apex point, here's where I'm getting the throttle, use all the road on exit. I'm going to only talk about those 3 things, but then I can use the radio as a reminder. So I don't want to talk a lot. I'm not trying to come up with new things, because when you're in the moment, that's not the time to be coached, right? Like, you're trying to do the thing. It's almost like if you like to play tennis, I'm a tennis enthusiast. I don't want someone coaching me on my serve, like as I do the ball toss, like as I'm coming up for it, right? Like, that's not the time to coach. But it's sort of been our mentality in this sport to coach someone as they're turning into the corner, right? So come up with the plan, and then on the radio, I can be very concise and just kind of remind you, not talking long, but just giving you tidbits to the stuff we talked heavily about before the session.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So just one more question here coming in from JWB Hull. He races NASA GTS2 at the Glen the weekend before last. Took 3rd place. First time in pole. Nice job, man. Video's up on YouTube. What would you charge to walk through and coach me? Would love that. Moving the wheel too much. So that's what we do at Racers360. You can actually insert that YouTube link directly and sends it directly to us. Our 1-lap analysis is $99. And all of our coaches are, I'm a coach on the platform. We have like Ricky Taylor from Penske Racing, Mike Skeen, all IMSA IndyCar guys.
You're going to have Jesse soon, I think, right?
I would love that. We'd love that. So it's $99. You'll get back a in-depth corner-by-corner coaching session on how you can go fast. There's some other options if you want to include data. That's a little bit extra. If you want to send it a whole race and get racecraft coaching as well, that's $299. So all super affordable. You can watch it, rewatch it anytime. And I can tell you,
what if I'm like going to go to a new track and I don't have video yet? Do you have like a bunch of in-car I can watch for tracks I'm going to go to?
We have a second service. So like, look, the heartbeat of what we do is personalized coaching, kind of what we're showing here. We do have something that we call the Racers Lounge. It's $100 a year. We have about 55 in-depth video track guides across the U.S. So go corner by corner. We'll talk to you about what to look for. We've got onboard videos. We've got live coaching sessions like every month. We have James Hinchcliffe joining us to go over Road America at the end of this month. We just had Johnny O'Connell before, so you can come in and watch people coach. And then we also have, online courses. Like I've got a few courses that I've done on the braking course and oversteer, understeer, how to set up the car, things like that. So that's $100 a year. It's called a Racers Lounge. And then everything else is like pay by coaching session. Awesome. So yeah, absolutely. We'll email you guys. Thanks for contacting us, Jamie, with the questions. If anyone else, do you guys have more questions on the driving? Anyone at home, if you got more questions on the driving, love to dig in more. If not, we might be good to go. What do you guys think?
I mean, I know next time I go to Daytona, I'm going to be faster than Tom, so I think we're set.
Yeah.
Hey, you only got to pick up 20 seconds. That won't be too hard.
That's easy peasy, man. Just keep the right foot down. Let the car be free. That's all you got to do. Hit your apexes, right?
Use the whole thing.
It definitely helps when you use all the racetrack. It's kind of it's a funny thing, right? But promise it'll work out for you. Awesome. Well, I think we're good to go. Not getting any questions from home. Thanks for everyone for joining us. Thank you, Grassroots Motorsports, for our partnership. We really enjoy working with you guys, and hopefully we can do some more and hopefully get this Fox up and winning some races soon.
Hey, yeah, hopefully you can coach us in a good car next time. Thanks a ton for the help.
Absolutely. And we'd love to, everyone to check out Racers360.com. If you have any questions, My name's Dion. I am personally available to send us an email, team@racers360.com, or just reply to the emails that you'll get after this with all the recording stuff. And yeah, we're looking forward to it. Enjoy it. We love this sport. We love talking about the sport. So regardless if you want coaching or not, reach out to us. We'd love to help you in any way possible. And have a good rest of your night, everyone.
Cool. And good talking to you. Thank you.
Support brands that support Grassroots Motorsports. Get your chemical solutions from CRC Industries. Visit crcindustries.com to learn more.